Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and happy Wednesday. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another jam-packed episode of the Brew City Lounge. I am your host, as always, Brandon. You can go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Wisco_Brandon. And please do not forget to follow us on all social media platforms at Brew City Pod. So much appreciate that. Very excited to have you guys tuning in. If you are on the live stream, good evening. If you are on your smart device, wherever you may be, all around the world, I appreciate you tuning into my show. Appreciate having give me your time and talk about our favorite teams. Of course, I am talking about those Milwaukee Bucks and Milwaukee Brewers. A lot to talk about, a lot to break down. Joining by a special guest, we're going to break down the good, the bad, and unfortunately the ugly. The Bucks do blow Game 5. They lose that game, go down 3-2. The Brewers, unfortunately, have hit a bit of a losing streak here, lose 3 straight. They lose earlier today to the Cincinnati Reds. We're going to talk a little bit about Coach Bud, whether he's on the hot seat, who would you replace him with in the event that he is fired. And then more importantly, kind of a question that kind of strikes my heart a little bit is, can Giannis win with his style of play? Before we dive into all of that, though, I do want to announce, guys, the Brew City Lounge does have its own line of merchandise on Facebook, on Twitter. It's pinned at the top of the page. Please go ahead and click that link. Check it out. I did mention bringing in a special guest, and of course, we are joined by a very special guest brought to you by the good folks over at One Call Technology. Give them a call at 888-585-8850 for all your cable and telecom needs. Dario Melendez from Bally Sports Wisconsin. Follow him on Twitter at Dario_Melendez. Dario, thanks for joining me, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. And again, I will be here all day, every day, as long as Rhino's not here, because he is a dingleberry.
Rhino will not be here because he's a Cubs fan. So we try to keep
the worst. He really is the worst.
I give him, because obviously we do the Packers podcast, so I give him a whole lot of crap because I'm like, Packers fan, Bucks fan, Cubs fan. I'm like, yeah. You gotta make that make sense for me there, Rhino.
He's
so
probably also a Cowboys fan, closet Cowboys fan.
Actually,
Alabama fan.
That's funny you just said that, because he is an Alabama fan.
Oh, so. I knew it. He's just the worst type of person. Like, the worst.
Then he goes, but I root for Wisconsin in basketball. I'm like, what?
What?
I'm a homer through and through, and there's no shame in that. And real quick though, before we dive into the show, and we got a lot to talk about. But Dario Melendez, for those that are tuning into the live feed, and I see you guys' comments, thank you so much for tuning in. Dario holds a special place in the show's heart. He was the first official guest for this show. He's also a Guinness World Record holder, for those that don't know. Mm-hmm. And just a couple weeks ago, about a week and a half ago, it was Dario Melendez Day in Milwaukee. So, round of applause for Dario. Thank you so much. As always,
we're going to be doing something fun with the Wisconsin State Fair. I think it's August 4th. Myself and Tim Dillard, we're going to set a couple world records. So
that's awesome.
So it's going to kind of be like a kickoff to the State Fair type thing.
And I'm glad you and Tim are on talking terms. I saw the hot dog eating contest didn't pan out. So
you want to talk about rigged? I totally got Washington General. It wasn't even fair. Like we were after the first 3 outs, we were up like 42-39, and somehow we only ate 3 more hot dogs. Like, give me a break.
So,
but
walk me through. So I saw your tweets about, come to, something at AmFam Field the next day. Yeah. What, did you go around and just grab guys like, hey, we're going to go?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, so I put it out to everybody on Twitter, and a couple guys came up. Clinton, who's a huge Brewers fan, Brewer Jeff, obviously guys that I know from kind of Brewers Twitter. Yeah. And I had to try to find some other guys, and I have a really good eye for talent, especially when it comes to hot dog eating contests. And I found the 2 biggest guys that I could find, and they crushed it. Mitchell and Derek were amazing. I just felt bad because I'm not like I don't want to say that it was rigged, but they had more hot dogs left over than we had left over when we counted at the end. And I felt bad for my dudes, but everybody got some free tickets and some signed autograph balls. So
that's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. And it's really, I was there. I was at AmFam. Obviously, I ran into you guys down there in April, and it was great. It was great to be back. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. It was phenomenal to be back. And then I was back in May, and again, great. They moved it up to 50%. So I was actually the first. I was there for the first game at 50%, which was really cool. And then I went back in June. So I'm a veteran, and I got some really cool tickets through the USO for Memorial Day weekend. And it was like the no mask policy. And at those 3 games, you could just feel every time I went there, the world was getting a little bit more normal every time I went there. And now obviously in about a week or so, week and a half, we're back to 100%. I know it's awesome for you guys because I've sat over that railing and you guys get heckled all the time. So it's probably, it probably feels good compared to last year, at least, to be okay, now we're back.
Anybody listening to my radio show, we have actually something down in the works right now. I can't give it away too much, but something good's coming soon. But I've never been a big proponent of home field advantage until this past year. And maybe I look at home field advantage as like a massive thing where it's almost like a guaranteed win. I mean, home field advantage could be 2 percentage points, like 1%, a slight edge, an inch here and there. So having these fans back in the stands, it really does something. Like we saw with the Bucks. You're up 20 points nearly in the third quarter. You're at home. I think you close that game out. I know we'll get to that in just in a little bit, but I mean, being at the ballpark, seeing all the fans around, it really has been very cool. The energy there, it's nice to have everybody back.
So getting right to your comment about getting to the Bucks, Dario, I promise you, yesterday I had a positive show plan. I know we ran into some scheduling conflicts, and anybody that follows the show and is watching, you know that we had a change of plans, and that's awesome. That happens from time to time. I promise you, Dario, the show, I have my notes right here. Yeah. Completely positive. I had the Bucks going in to Brooklyn last night to win the game. I had the Brewers, it was before they lost last night to Cincinnati, and obviously they lost today. And I'm sitting there watching the game today, the Brewer game, that is. And I'm watching Freddie go out there and obviously does what Freddie does and what he has been doing all year. And I look over at my girlfriend and I'm like, I feel bad. It's like, I'm going to have Dario on the show and it's going to be all negative topics. So we'll jump right into the Bucks. I mean, what were your initial thoughts?
So first off, I was so mad at the TNT app. I could not get that damn thing to work. So I've
heard it's horrible. I've heard it's really
bad. I couldn't get it to work. It was really annoying. Like we're 2021. You can't get this TNT app to work. Anyways, I digress. So I didn't get to watch like the first 2.5 quarters. So when we finally got out to the set, and that game was cruising because I was doing Brewers.
It was fast.
The Bucks were up 17, and we were in like the 17th inning. And then like you could kind of see the rest of the crowd looking at the monitors. No one was really paying attention to the game because you would hear cheers out of nowhere. It's like it was a ball. The umpire just scratched himself, and we're cheering about this. What's going on? I could tell that there was an energy vibe, a very negative energy vibe going around American Family Field. So I went and sat in the bleachers, was watching the game. I could just see what was happening. And I think Charles Barkley said it best in the post-game show. I mean, it just seemed like dumb basketball, almost kind of like a brain fart where you had 2 massive advantages in that game. One, size. I mean, obviously no one could guard Brook Lopez. Put him in the post. Brook Lopez has shown throughout this season, I think a best example was that Charlotte game. I mean, Charlotte tried to play small ball with the Bucks. I think it was their final extended road trip of the season. And the Bucks just went to the paint all day, every day. And I thought to myself, this is a preview of what we're going to see in that series. We haven't really seen it yet, which is kind of odd to me. But you have the massive advantage in the paint. And then 2, James Harden's corpse was on the court. Like anybody who had James Harden guarding him should have had the ball in their hand. It should have been an ISO ball the entire time. You could go to the dunker spot, you can go to the corner, but whoever had James Harden, everybody get away and let them go out because he just couldn't move on that hamstring. And for a majority of the game, they did that. And then for the final quarter and a half, they didn't do that. Now, you do have to tip your cap to Kevin Durant. What he did, we had never seen in basketball history. 45 points, 15 assists, 15 rebounds, 10 assists in a playoff game. Never been done before. Amazing. Awesome. But the Bucks let that one slip away. Now, that said, I still think they win this series. I think they blow them out at home. I think it's going to be a blowout at home. And then they go on the road and they get a win. Hopefully this was a nice little wake call for some adjustments to be made. But man, that was it was definitely surprising to see how that fourth quarter and the last 5 minutes of the third panned out.
Yeah, so I'm watching it and I was on the edge of my seat the whole game. I'm watching it and I'm flipping back in between the Brewer game and the Bucks game, obviously, but watching that game, and I was yelling like during the game, and my sister had been over and she was like, they're up 13, they're up 15, they're up 17. She goes like, how many more points do you want them to be up? And I said, this game just has a weird feeling to it, because it felt like a game where if you're watching it and you're not looking at the score, you're like, okay, the Bucks are up by 30, because that's how it felt. Look, Brooklyn didn't get into double digits till almost the end of the first quarter. It was, and like they had their first 10 points. I think 6 of them came on free throws. So they weren't obviously scoring the ball. And the thing about Kevin Durant that, that makes me so irritated is like, he hits the most ridiculous shots. Like when you need a stop and they're down to the shot clock and he one-legged, like falling away. And again, you're right. Tip the cap to Kevin Durant. He had, of course, it was against the Milwaukee Bucks, the best game of his career, of all the great games he's ever had. And he has the best one against the Bucks. But I think the reason they lost that game, and I think they withstand that Kevin Durant game. I mean, I really do. Jeff Green was the reason that Milwaukee.
Who had him making 8 threes?
He made his first 7. And the first couple that went in, I'm like, okay, he's not terrible at him. He'll hit him. He's a career 40% shooter, but he's like 35. You know what I mean? Like, put somebody on him. And then you've seen 4, 5, 6, and you're like, holy crap, like why? And then Blake Griffin too, I think hit 3 last night. It was just, if you take away a few of those big hits by Jeff Green, like the Bucks, even though they let that lead squander, probably still walk away with a win. And that's what's the most frustrating part, is because Kevin Durant was great and he deserves all the attention that he's going to get today. It's funny when Giannis only gets attention when the Bucks lose. That's a whole nother conversation. But I think if Jeff Green doesn't go off for 27 points and maybe goes off for 15, well, the Bucks probably win that game.
I probably think you see a little bit more Giannis on Green next game, maybe some more Bobby Portis, who obviously didn't play. Right. And again, if you're not going to play Bobby Portis, that's fine. Like, you're going to shorten your bench. I get that. But that means Lopez is going to be in the court, which means you got to take advantage of the paint. I mean, that's the biggest thing. They have no one on that team that can guard Brook Lopez. They have no one. Like, there's literally no one on the Nets that could guard Brook Lopez the most. Mm-hmm. So that needs to be something that's addressed in Game 6.
And I'm not a guy, if you like follow me on Twitter, or if you pay attention to my opinions, I don't want anybody to get fired. I hope that Coach Bud, and I'm with you, I think the Bucks do. I said it last night. For some reason, Philadelphia 76ers fans love to come after me on Twitter after a Bucks loss. But, I said Bucks in 7. I said it just has – look, the Bucks, they have not played their best. They haven't played a great game, like from start to finish, really, in this entire series. And they're still right there. And they easily could have been up 3-2 as of last night. I still think – I'm with you. I think the Bucks probably do win in 7. But I'm not a guy that is crazy about going after. I know everybody loves the fire Andy Haynes group and the fire Craig Counsell and the fire Matt LaFleur. It's always a coach. And now it's obviously Mike Budenholzer. And I have my thoughts on Mike Budenholzer. I think there's things that he could do differently, but I think every coach has things that they can do different. The guy's won 162 games in his first 3 seasons in Milwaukee. I think he, I don't, as a Bucks fan, Dario, as a Bucks fan that grew up in the dark world of Bucks basketball, like, we don't have grounds to stand on to demand this or that. Like, we're just starting to peek
get a little
into
spoiled, and it's unfortunate. Like, you see what happens when you get some wins, you get a little bit of spoiled, and then you want more. I mean, go back 4 years when the Brewers weren't making the postseason, when the Bucks weren't doing anything, when the Packers weren't doing much. I mean, you had Aaron Rodgers, but he'd be hurt. You wouldn't make the playoffs. It's like, now you have a perennial postseason of Brewers, one of the best teams in the NBA in the Bucks, and a team that goes to the playoffs the past 2 years, the NFC Championship the past 2 years, in the Packers. I mean, you get a little spoiled. Look, I grew up in South Florida. We have the Dolphins. I mean, the Dolphins are terrible. They've been terrible for 20 years. We had the 3 good years with the Heat, which are 4 good years, which was awesome. But then they go away, and the Marlins. And I always have this conversation. I used to have this with Armin. Would you take playoff postseason every year or a championship one year and then not make the playoffs the rest of the time? Like, what would you rather have? Because I know a lot of people say it's all about the ring, but there is something about having your team as a perennial contender. Like, every year, you know, you're going to have a team in the playoffs. You're going to go to a game, and they're most likely going to win. Like, growing up a Marlins fan, we had 97 and 03. 97, they make it as a wild card team, they win the World Series. 03, they make it as a wild card team, they win the World Series. Up until last year, they had never made the playoffs in any of the year. So it's like, they make the playoffs, they win the World Series, great, but every other year they're garbage. So it's like, do you want to be a team like the Bucks right now or the Brewers who continue to make the postseason, continue to make the playoffs with that chance of getting the ring? You want to have that guaranteed ring, but every other year you're terrible. It's an interesting conversation. I just don't know what the right answer is. I know a lot of people say, well, just give me the ring. It's like, yeah, you know what? That was fun. That was fun cheering on Council in 97 to win that Marlins world title against the Indians. But then it's like, wow. Then you have 98 and 99 and 2000. They're so bad. And 03, they're good again. Then 04, they're terrible. And 05, they're bad. It's like, it really is challenging for a fan base. It really is.
That's a really good topic, because you see that constant argument. And I know we're not a Packers podcast, but you see a lot of it with Packers fans, because it's all about championships. And I always say it, on our Packers podcast. Tom Brady kind of ruined how we look at professional sports, because
Tom Brady ruined it because he was selfless. And look, I grew up a Dolphins fan. I don't care about Tom Brady. I don't give a crap about that dude. Hate the Patriots. But what he did is he set a precedent in New England. I'm not taking top dollar, so you're not taking top dollar. Because in the NFL, you can do 2 things. You could either chase money or chase a ring. You can barely do both. So if you look at the top 10 paid quarterbacks in the NFL under their current contract, do you know how many have a championship ring under that contract?
Not many. Yep.
0. Patrick Mahomes got it before he signed the big deal. Same with Russell Wilson. Same with Aaron Rodgers. You can't pay that type of money if you want to win championships. And look, they earned it. Aaron Rodgers earned every penny of that contract. He has been phenomenal. He's a once-in-a-generational quarterback. But if you want to get paid like that, there goes your receiver depth. There goes your offensive line depth. Heck, there goes your defensive depth. What Tom Brady did in New England, he was, I'm going to say, paid less than Ryan Tannehill for most of his career. He was like 15th, 16th highest paid quarterback, which means you can put that money elsewhere, which means when someone comes in like a Randy Moss or a Corey Dillon or a Chris Long, they're like, hey, you know what? You're really good at football. But if our guy, Tom Brady, the future Hall of Famer, is not taking top dollar, you're not taking top dollar. And it worked. It worked. And the same thing is happening in Buccaneers. Gronk didn't take top dollar. Antonio Brown didn't take top dollar. Sue didn't. I mean, they brought in a lot of talent on very cheap salaries because Brady decided he was just going to go somewhere where he knew he could have some financial flexibility. And look what happened. So, again, the Packers want to be great. They're always going to be competitive because you have that guy in Aaron Rodgers, whether he comes back or not. But it's hard to win championships when you're paying quarterback money to a quarterback.
So let's dive into my next question for you. And it's a question that I found myself. So after every post game for the Bucks, I do a post game show, breaking down, recapping the game. And I got into a big heated debate. So I made a few comments a couple games ago. I said I love Giannis like my own children, and they know that. So it's not a secret. But so I defend him like my own. I had John McLaughlin on my show a couple of weeks ago, and told him, and he kind of alluded to it too, what Giannis has meant for the city of Milwaukee. Obviously, the Deer District, let's be real, probably doesn't happen without a guy like Giannis, and obviously the Pfizer Forum and everything that kind of comes with it. And so I got to a lot of discussion and within friends and apparently 76ers fans that love to come after me. But I kept hearing the phrase.
Them what Joel Embiid's ever done.
Well, that's the thing. He goes 0 for 12 the other night. Then I hear about how Giannis can't And that's what I'm getting at. Giannis, they say Giannis can't win, and this is everybody, a lot of Bucks fans too. Giannis can't win with this style of play. I go against the grain, and I believe in my heart, Dario, I really do, that if it's not this year, it's going to be eventually. Giannis will bring home a championship. It's part of his legacy. He's come from where he's at to where he's, or from where he's been from to where he's at now. He's gone through too much and has he's won every award that you can win, other than a title and a finals MVP. Like, he's 26. I think he's going to win a championship. You hear a lot of people talking about his style of play. I don't know. Again, it kind of goes back to the Mike Budenholzer question about his job. I'm not sure if Giannis is totally being utilized again. That's a question for maybe somebody else that has a higher IQ with the X's and O's than I do when it comes to basketball. I think Giannis can win with his style of play. I think he can dominate. He already dominates, most games. I mean, Kevin Durant's a generational talent. But in your opinion, do you see Giannis eventually winning? Do you think it's possible for him to win with his style of play?
Oh, for sure. I mean, there are 2 championships I can think of in the past 20 years that were won with one superstar. And that was that Kawhi Leonard won against the Bucks lost to an 18, and Dirk Nowitzki, I want to say it was 2011 against the Heat, where it was just those 2 guys and like no one else. There might not be another superstar on this team with Giannis, but there are other really good role players. Obviously, Chris Middleton is great. He is maybe not superstar, but elite. Drew Holiday's the same way. For Giannis's game to work, guys have to be making shots. I mean, we've seen that, and that's not rocket science. It's nothing new. It's just the way it is. Guys need to be making shots to allow Giannis a lot more paint production. Now, teams have shown I'm going to give those guys the shots, and if they make them, that's fine, and we'll live with that because we don't want Giannis to go off. But I think you can with that. That said, he needs to develop a little bit of a mid-range game. I mean, I understand he likes the 3 ball, and he's gotten much, much better at shooting it. It's just not where it needs to be taken in crunch time. Right before the bubble, he was getting really consistent with that turnaround baseline fadeaway, kind of like what Middleton shoots a lot of. And then all of a sudden he goes to the bubble. It's not there. It hasn't really come back. But the elbow jumper, the stop pop jumper, that turnaround fadeaway, that's something like he really needs to develop. And I see him in practice all the time. Like, he'll be working with Darvin Ham, he'll be working with other guys, and he does it nonstop for 15, 20, 30 minutes in shoot around, 30 minutes in practice, and it looks smooth. And sometimes it translates and sometimes it doesn't. But that's probably the evolution of his game, because that style of play can work. But you saw it yesterday. You need to hit shots to get Griffin, to get Jeff Green to come up on you a little bit so you can get around them.
And the only knock I'll say I have, and it could be a knock on Giannis and it could be a knock on Coach Bud, and honestly, it can be a combination of the both. Now, when I started this show, I believe I may have had you on and I asked you this question. If not, it was somebody down the line. I wish I could see Giannis become more of a quote-unquote modern-day Shaquille O'Neal. Now, obviously, he doesn't have the size of Shaquille O'Neal. But around the NBA, Dario, there's maybe a handful of guys, maybe not even that many, that could probably consistently defend Giannis in the paint. Maybe Rudy Gobert, and Giannis probably muscles him out of the way. Maybe Bam Adebayo, because size-wise they match up pretty good. But in a series like we're in right now, there's, like you said, there's nobody that is able to guard, number one, Brook Lopez, and number two, especially a guy like Giannis. I wish I could see him play a little bit more in the paint. Now, I know he's special. I know it takes 3 steps. He can step around people, and it's not it's easy for him. But you're seeing a lot of offensive charging. You're seeing he gets the ball at the top of the key. My 5-year-old knows what he wants to do with it. He knows he's trying to drive to the hoop, and so does everybody. You see Blake Griffin sag back down into the paint, and he's just waiting for him to do it. And if he catches the ball down low and works a little bit, like you said, a little bit of either, he's working on the turnaround mid-range jumper, and he's doing pretty good with that. But even like a little pop shot, even like a little bit of a hook, like consistently, there's not going to be many people in the league that can defend him down low. Now, I know, Mike Budenholzer's offense is kind of run and gun and shoot it and live and die by the 3. It's just something watching it that just irks my brain because I'm like, if this guy's down low and if he's catching the ball down low, Giannis, that is, I'm not sure he doesn't score 50 points a game.
The issue is, and look, I totally agree with that. The problem is he's not really a post guy. Like, I know a couple of years ago, he's working with Hakeem Olajuwon to work on some post moves. And you see a little bit now, he kind of has a hook shot. It's more like a jump and kind of push it toward the rim shot that he does. But he's not a post player. Not that he's not strong, but it takes away the strength of what he does, and that speed and strength mixed together. Like, when he's coming downhill, he's at his best. Now, the problem is the NBA's changed where you slide under a guy, it's an offensive foul. But, I mean, Blake Griffin's nothing special. Believe me, no one thinks Blake Griffin's good. But in the post, like, he can hold his own with Giannis, where out on the perimeter, he can't hold his own. So, yeah, I mean, I agree. There's certain instances where Giannis would definitely benefit from some post moves. It's just that's never really been his game, and that might be the next evolution, trying to work that in a little bit more and working that shot in too.
Because something that's interesting to me, and I got to give credit where credit is due, Marcus Johnson, who's the best at what he does.
The GOAT.
And he tweeted out, he said, on 2-point attempts, when Giannis takes 2 or fewer dribbles, his shooting is at 82%. When he takes 3 or more, it's down to all the way to 44. It almost cuts it completely in half. And that's what I mean by, less. I don't want to say Giannis, doesn't have the IQ, but less time he has to think, because you can see him.
Less ISO ball, right? Like, so when he's taking more dribbles, and Steve and I talk about this all the time. Steve Novak, he talks about this a ton, and we all know Novak is one of the best 3-point shooters in NBA history. Statistically, it's just a fact. The less dribbles, the better. I mean, when Novak sees these guys coming up court, he'd always tell me, don't dribble, just shoot. Because if you take a dribble, you're done. You're lost. You want to shoot in rhythm, and it's the same thing with Giannis. You want to drive in rhythm. When he gets the ball and he backs it out, and he backs it in and he backs it out, or when he wants to ISO, and that's when you kind of get caught in some issues because you're taking yourself out of a natural basketball rhythm. So I'd love to see a little bit more pick and pop. I'd love to see a little bit more him setting the screen and rolling to the rim, a little bit more two-man game. And we don't see a lot of that, but when we do, it seems so natural. Heck, that final play is exactly what that was. Chris Middleton and Giannis working a two-man game. If Giannis catches the ball, that's the easiest dunk of his life. But unfortunately, he didn't catch it. We don't know what happens from there. That's the next evolution. I keep talking about evolution, maybe evolution of this offense. We saw this year, you add the dunker zone, right? And it worked. We haven't seen a lot of a wall this year. The next might just be running kind of set offense where every time down, someone comes up to set a pick. How many times does Kevin Durant get a pick? Every time down the court, they're picking PJ Tucker to get him free.
A few times.
The Bucks don't really do that, and it's odd because they have two guys that would be perfect with it. In Brook Lopez, who can knock down a three, you can knock down a mid-range, or you can just roll to the rim. And Giannis, who would be the perfect dude to run a two-game with going downhill.
So that's going to kind of lead to my next question. And I'm kind of like Charles Barkley with his topic last night. I didn't want to do this topic, but I feel like it's being talked about everywhere. In your opinion, now you're talking about, not setting picks for guys like Chris Middleton or Giannis or anybody for that matter. Brook Lopez, for whatever reason, Dario just plays on the logo, out on offense, out on the wing. He's 7'1", and nobody can guard him in the paint. The rotations have been in question. Bobby Portis didn't play last night. I don't know. I know Coach Bud said that it was a spacing last night that they were looking at. I don't know. I don't want to call for the guy's job. He's won 162 games and 21 playoff games in his 3 years in Milwaukee. If you would have told me that, Dario, 4 years ago, I would have signed my life away for it because that was something we needed. And I love Coach Bud. I really do. I don't want to see anybody get fired. But in your opinion, what you have seen it so far in this playoffs, and people have to also remember, and I hate Kevin Durant doesn't have a fully healthy James Harden. He doesn't have a Kyrie Irving. Neither does Giannis. Okay, guys, let's be a little harder on Kevin Durant than he doesn't have two other perennial superstars on his team. But what you've seen so far in this round, maybe last year in the bubble, I don't really like to count last year because had that been a normal year, I think the Bucks probably do, go pretty deep in those playoffs with the team that they were having in the historical run that they were on. I believe they were on pace for 70 wins. But what you've seen so far within last year and maybe this year,
look,
do you think
it's what have you done for me lately, league? I mean, obviously he's on the hot seat. I think we all knew. I think we knew he was on the hot seat coming into the season with the way John Horst addressed the bench. Because we know Coach Bud loves to use the bench. So what did he do? He made the bench weaker so that Bud would be forced come playoff time to have a smaller rotation. Remember last round, I should say, everybody thought Coach Bud was a genius. He outcoached Eric Spoelstra. Now you're in this playoffs. In the last 2 games, he was a genius. This game, he's not a genius. But it really is the ebb and flow. That's why I always tell people I'm not a fan of any sport because I try not to get caught up in it. I root for teams. I like the Bucks a lot. I like the Brewers, but I can't be a fan because I'm not fanatical. Like the loss doesn't hit me that way. So I look back and look, if the Bucks lose in this round, I mean, I think there's a high percentage chance that Coach Bud's gone. I mean, we see it. I forget his name, the Pistons head coach, not Avery Bradley. I always forget his name, but anyways, he wins Coach of the Year with the
right?
No, he wins Coach of the Year with the Raptors.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. Dwayne Casey.
Dwayne Casey, and gets fired. Look what happened in Portland. The Trailblazers go to the playoffs, 7 straight years, they fire their coach. It wouldn't be shocking. It wouldn't be new. My issue is you have a question you want. Well, what's the answer then? Like the question is, well, who would be the next head coach? I hear Becky Hammon. Well, okay. I hear Darvin Ham. Well, okay. The issue with those two is Becky Ham's coming from where? San Antonio with Greg Popovich. Darvin Ham's coming from where? Coach Bud. I mean, same thing. It's the same damn tree. Who are you going to bet that be better? Like Mark Jackson. I loved Mark Jackson, but he's not what you call a defensive coach. Maybe defense isn't what they need. I mean, so you have all of these. Well, what about this guy? Well, what about that guy? Are they better than Coach Bud? And I don't know if they are. I don't know if the options out there are better than the option you have now. So that's the biggest question I'd have. Like, look, I get it. It's a business. The goal is to win a championship, especially with this team, especially with 3 guys on max contracts. That's the goal, to win a championship. And if that doesn't happen, then he might be, unfortunately, the result of not doing that. But who do you replace him with? And I don't know the answer.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And I was actually texting with a buddy today because he's in like full blow up mode. And me and him, he's a good friend of mine. He's a big Bucks fan. He said, trade Giannis, trade Chris Middleton. He goes, it's not working. He goes,
is this Rhino? Smack the crap out of that dude.
Although I believe Rhino may have said something along the lines about Giannis.
Anybody that says trade Giannis is an idiot, a dingleberry, like biggest full-blown dingleberry in the world.
And my dad drops a comment right there, and we had the same discussion, and it alludes to what you were just saying there, Dario. Is like, who do you go out and get? I think there's a few names, but again, we don't know. I mean, there's so many coach openings right now. I mean, today was crazy.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's nuts to see like what was going on in the NBA today, and it kind of took the buzz off of what happened with the Bucks, which is fine by me.
That's true.
One guy that I love that is a big reason why the Nets are where they are is Kenny Atkinson. Like, I got to cover Kenny Atkinson when he got hired by the Nets a couple of years ago. He was definitely the scapegoat with that team.
Oh, yeah.
Problem is he's another Bud disciple. So, I mean, he comes from the same coaching branch. There's only so many coaching branches out there. But Kenny Atkinson is a great basketball coach. I mean, he played overseas. He understands the game from both angles. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a name you hear. I'm surprised he hasn't gotten a shot yet, another shot at being a head coach. If you're going in another direction, I would love to see that guy come in. But I mean, I feel like they're going to go big if they do make a change. That said, I still think the Bucks make a run. I think they win the next 2 games. If they win the next 2 games, it sets up really well for them for an NBA title. And if they win an NBA title, we're not talking about a head coaching change. We're talking about the miraculous comeback and overcoming adversity, because that's how we all work here. But if we do, I just don't know what the answer is, even though I love a guy like Kenny Atkinson.
Yeah, I'm with you. I do believe that they do turn around in the next 2 games. It's going to be, look, it's going to be nerve-wracking tomorrow, but I know the Fiserv is going to bring the energy that's much needed. And you're probably right if that game's at home. And again, I said it, I believe it again when you were on the show when I first started this podcast in April. I said it multiple times that seeding this year was going to be more important than it has been. And now we're looking at obviously seeding as being a huge reason as why, this series is down for the Bucks right now. Look, if it's the other way around, this series is probably over, in my opinion, because you probably don't drop the first two games. You probably win, one on the road, and you probably win yesterday at the Pfizer. But we'll see what happens. Bucks Nets tomorrow. I believe it's 7:30. I'm not sure exactly, to be honest with you, but
I don't even know what day it is right now. I've been working so much, which is great.
Looking across the freeway going down 94, the Brewers again. We're on an absolute tear. They were 16-4, I think, in the first 20 games with since the Willy Adames trade, and we'll get your thoughts on that. They do get swept by the pesky Cincinnati Reds for whatever reason. No matter what Cincinnati's record is,
the
it feels like
people think. No, like
they
Reds,
are.
If the Reds get pitching, they're going to be really good. I mean, the 1-2 punch of Castellanos and Winker always going to get on base and set the table. Mousakis is going to be coming back soon. Barnhart and Stevenson, a really good combination. All they need is pitching. The bullpen for the Reds has been terrible. They look good this season. But we also saw this in the beginning of May. The Brewers have some key injuries right now. I mean, Colton Wong hasn't been playing, and Lorenzo Cain hasn't been playing. And guys like Jackie Bradley, who wasn't expected to play a lot, guys like Chase Peterson and Daniel Robertson, who weren't expected to play a lot, are having to play a lot of expanded roles right now. They've lost 3 games, the Reds. Couldn't care less. They are still hotter than anything. Right now, even with that sweep by the Reds, they're still 2 games up on them and in first place. I'm good. I think we're all okay here. They're going to get Colton Wong back this series, which is going to help them dramatically. They'll get Lorenzo Cain back in about 2 weeks, which is going to help them drastically. And then you have the All-Star break, and you know what that means? You're going to make a trade. So I'm really not too worried. Look, I mean, it's been a really good stretch since Willy Adames has joined. It was a bad 3 days, and that's it. I mean, that's really all you can say. Remember, after April, best record in baseball. 2 weeks, horrible stretch, dropped into 2 games under 500. Get Willy Adames April 22nd, best record in baseball. 3 games, it's the ebb and flow. This is where I talk about I can't be a fan doing my job because I would tear my hair out with these 3 games. But when you look big picture, you're still, 8 games over 500. You're in first place. Worst comes to worst, the Cubs win tonight, and you're a game out of first place in the second. So, yeah, it wasn't great that he lost to the Reds, but people don't realize the Reds are a pretty good team. They got some good pitching this weekend. Vladimir Gutierrez, really good young pitcher.
Yeah,
Luis Castillo finally starting to come on. Sonny Gray is going to be probably doing the same thing when he comes back. If they can figure out pitching, the Reds could be scary.
And when you look at the Cincinnati Reds, and I don't think people realize, I mean, they're 4 games over 500. They're better right now than the St. Louis Cardinals. So from a record standpoint, and like you said, that lineup is pretty darn good. And it's only going to get better when Moose does come back. And for whatever reason, Cincinnati always kind of is a tough win when we do beat them. But moving on, past before this 3-game series, again, the best team in baseball. I want your thoughts real quick about the Willy Adames trade. Now, when it first happened, I came on my podcast and I wasn't a fan of the actual trade. Now, it's not the person or the player in Willy Adames, because I do have the feeling that he's going to become a pretty phenomenal player, if not he already, for the Milwaukee Brewers and a key piece to that offense and defense. But I didn't necessarily feel like it was a rush trade, like a panic trade, because it happened, if you remember, I believe it was the day after Luis Urias had those 3 errors at shortstop, and it felt like it was boom, okay. And I love Luis Urias. He's 23-year-old kid. He obviously came in that Trent Grisham trade that gets highly criticized because of the player that he's turned out to be. But it felt like, okay, you gave up Arcia. You got a couple arms back. Yeah, they're down in AAA and they're struggling. Chad Sabaka and Patrick Weigel. And then you trade away Arcia, and you're like, okay, well, they're giving it to this 23-year-old kid, and then he struggles, and then has a bad game, and then they're like, okay, well, we're going to trade 2 more bullpen arms, and JP Fireisen and Drew Rasmussen to go get another shortstop, and I didn't like how that felt. It felt like it was oh crap, we got to do something quick. Now I love it, hindsight, but now the bullpen is kind of it's a struggle, and I guess your best pitcher outside of Devin Williams and Josh Hader, but you got to get to them somehow. And Brent Suter, it's probably your number one guy coming out of the bullpen. What were your thoughts around?
Look, like I said, I totally, it was a panic move. They had to make a move. They were not getting the production at a shortstop. Obviously, Matt Arnold has a relationship from his days with Tampa Bay Rays. So he knew that the Rays had this top prospect, I think his name's Franco, in the system, and they've been trying to get him up there. So Willie Adames, with a couple years of control, was expendable. And I called Trisha Whitaker, who is their Sophia Minert for the Rays. She used to work in Green Bay, so she has Wisconsin ties. And she was devastated at this news. Like, the entire clubhouse was devastated. This is like the best guy in the world, extremely streaky hitter, magician in the field. And we're seeing all that. Like, the addition from him, the reason this team has kind of turned it around and got back on track a little bit, it's not a coincidence. It's because of Willie Adames.
Mm-hmm.
Take away these 3 games, though, Brandon, bullpen's been great. The Boxberger, and it's hilarious that Boxberger struggled the first day you're not allowed to put a substance on the ball. I'm not saying he was, but sunscreen and rosin. That is a common thing, like extremely common. Just get a little grip, because the way Dillard was explaining it yesterday on our Brewers Live pregame show, you guys know, like, when you buy a new football, how it has that slickness to it. In the NFL, the trainers take it, they throw it in a dryer, they sand it off, they make sure that football is extremely not kind of worn, not slick, worn out. You see Tom Brady wear a glove every now and then. And you see quarterbacks do that around the league. It's the same thing with a baseball. I don't think people realize, like, baseballs have like a little film on it that makes it very slick. And the reason why there would be foreign substances on it is to gain grip and traction. Obviously, some people took it to the wrong level, but I wouldn't be surprised to see walks go up and hit batters go up, because some guys want to use that sunscreen rosin combination just to kind of get the ball to a place that they like to feel, where it's not as slick. Boxberger's been great. Brent Suter has been great. You just don't have as much depth. Like, Hobie Milner has been okay. Eric Yardley has been okay. Obviously, they've had their ups and downs, but like the main 4 guys in Suter, Boxberger, Williams, and Hader have been really good during this stretch. Boxberger had a rough outing in the game 2 against the Reds. You don't see many of those from him. Obviously, Hader and Williams have been great, but the Brewers felt comfortable trading from strength. Rasmussen, I believe, is in the minors right now. He hasn't even come up with the Rays. JB Fire hasn't been doing a pretty good job. But that's another place that they might try to address. They might try to get another bullpen arm come trade deadline. They might try to get another a third or first baseman come trade deadline. I'm excited because the Brewers are doing what they're supposed to do. I always say at the All-Star break, be within 2 to 3 games of first place, and Stearns will make something happen. And he has done that the past 2-3 seasons, and it's worked out for the Brewers.
And going back to your initial comment about this team, look, and I think Brewers fans, and sometimes I forget, Christian Yelich, Lorenzo Cain, Colton Wong, Keston Hiura, now Travis Shaw. Like, this team has not played together much at all as a whole. Now, obviously, I get it. Injuries are part of the game. But when you had 17 guys in the first month of the season on the injured list, with the former MVP and Christian Yelich on there as well. And then you got guys like Colton Wong, who's on his second stint. So I think as Brewer fans, we kind of need to just relax. I'm happy with where they're at. I know they got swept against Cincinnati, and I'm okay with it. The Cubs are losing right now, and they're going up against Jacob deGrom, so you probably can have an idea where that's going to go. I do want to ask you, though, about Lorenzo Cain, and I hate talking about this because I love the guy. Are we starting, in your opinion, third stint on the injured list for this year? Missed all of last year. He didn't miss it. He opted out, and rightfully so. In your opinion, Dario, are we starting to see kind of the beginning of the end for Lorenzo Cain?
I don't look. Everybody's going to start to age out. I think he's still playing at a really high level. The problem is hamstrings are tricky, man. That's why James Harden. I wouldn't be surprised if James Harden sits out Game 6 so he can rest up for Game 7, because it's obviously not due for the Nets. But hamstrings are tricky. I don't know if you've ever pulled your hamstring. When I was playing college football, I pulled my hamstring once. I always pulled my hamstring, and I'd always come back too early, and I'd pull it again. So that's why you're seeing Cain out until past July. He might not come back till after the All-Star break. We don't know. They're targeting July 1st. Hopefully that happens. But hamstrings are really, really tricky. And with baseball being such a quick twitch sport where you're standing around, go. I mean, Ken Griffey Jr. used to deal with it all the time. But I think Kane's playing at an extremely high level when he's been there. We see what he can do in the outfield. He puts like good at bats when he was getting kind of back into a rhythm. It's just that hamstring injury. And same with Colton Wong with his oblique. Like, it's a really tricky muscle group. You have to get it fully 100% correct and healthy, because if you don't, if you're only at 80%, if you're at 90%, if you're at 95%, it's going to snap again on you.
Yeah, and talking about the trade deadline, and I kind of want to have like a little bit of a fun conversation, maybe a little bit of a prediction here.
Right.
Now, we were on Twitter and or Instagram, I think, is where everybody's kind of seeing it. And it's Ryan Braun out in Malibu, and he's hitting at some local park or whatever. And his wife is on Instagram taking videos of it. And there's like a bunch of kids out there, and they're calling it the Malibu Home Run Derby. Is that a coincidence, Dario, that right about, I don't know, a couple weeks before the All-Star game, we're starting to see Ryan Braun take some swings?
Look, I mean, there's only one team that he's going to sign with, and it's Brewers.
That's true. Yeah.
And look, and I say that just because I've worked outside of this market. And I worked in New York, obviously in Florida at ESPN. He's not well liked outside of this market. He's done a really, really good job reinventing himself and mea culpa-ing to this fan base. I mean, he just has. Like, he's done a really good job reinventing himself, kind of like Mike Tyson. Everybody thought Mike Tyson was a crazy man. He's done a really good job reinventing himself. There's only one place he's going, that would be here. I don't know where he plays. First base, that's the only option, really, right? So,
and they need it, though. I mean, Daniel Vogelbach's been great. I mean, he got.
I mean, he's been really good, and he's earned his reps. I think it'd be hard, man. It'd be hard. There's a difference between taking batting practice and seeing major league pitching. And example, Keston Hiura right now.
Yeah, that's fair.
And it's a bit misleading what AAA is right now, because you look at they cut. I don't know if we talked about this last time, but I've talked about it a couple times already. They obviously cut a bunch of minor league teams away. And because of that, it means you have to age out a bunch of guys. And a guy like Tim Dillard, which means AAA pitching is actually more like AA pitching, because they try to advance these guys up so much because they don't really have any arms that are veterans that they can throw out there. So Keston Hiura right now is feasting really on AA pitching. So it's going to be hard for him to come back and make that jump from AA to the major leagues. And Ryan Braun's probably going to have to do the same thing. Now, he's a professional hitter. We know how good he is. But it's going to be really hard for him to come back, like, post-All-Star break and have an impact. Like, I don't want people to get their hopes up. I hope he does. I like Ryan Braun a lot. It would be a lot to get him caught up. Probably the smartest thing Rhino's ever said in his life. But look,
he's a Cubs fan, though. He doesn't want to see Ryan Braun.
Yeah, he's an idiot. Some names out there. I mean, well, what do you think you need to adjust? I mean, address, I should say. Do you need to address starting pitching? Probably not. Even though I would run at Max Scherzer. I mean, two reasons. One, if you're going to go to an extended rotation, a 6-man rotation, you need another arm, obviously. And two, it takes away the option of Scherzer going to the Reds, the Cubs, the Cardinals. And then you put Lauer in the bullpen. You put Anderson. Probably not. Anderson's been pretty good. Anderson's just dealt with a great game last night. His starts. He's been better than his outings have shown. Yeah. But come playoff time, you have most likely Hauser, Anderson, Lauer in the bullpen. That's a pretty strong bullpen right there. Third base, first base. Third base, Josh Donaldson. I mean, batting what, 260, 270. Jose Ramirez is the dude I would love to have.
Oh, I mean, but I think you got to probably include. Yeah, you're probably talking Bryce Terrain, right? I mean,
which was fine by me because you have Willie Thomas, who's under contract
for
I agree. 3 more years, and his contract with the Indians is super team friendly. I think it's like $7 million each year for the next 2-3 years. Jose Ramirez would be amazing, especially with Cleveland kind of tearing things down. But outside of that, I mean, it's kind of slim pickings. I mean, first base options, Jesus Aguilar, that would be fun. Obviously, you have some familiarity with him. You know what he can do. He's on a 1-year deal, so it would be probably cheap to get him. Are the Marlins going to be sellers? Most likely. But but Daniel Vogelback's playing pretty good. I mean, technically, you could play Aggie at third base. I mean, I don't know if people saw it. He's a really good third baseman.
Yeah,
he'd be taking ground balls there all the time. The issue Council was having is he thought that Arcia and Aguilar would just distract each other the entire time talking. It kind of
which is probably true.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. It just gets a slim. A guy like Frazier, Adam Frazier, second base. Obviously, you don't need second base, but could Adam Frazier, who's hitting 310, play first base? Could he play third base? I don't know if he has the arm to play third base, but he bats 310. I mean, we've seen David Stearns go out and get a third baseman and put him at second base. But I mean, like, there are little things to kind of tinker with. But I'm excited to see what Stearns and Matt Arnold do because they usually make good decisions. I know Jonathan Soap's name's been put out there as well. He's in first base.
Yeah.
Look, Scope it was his first time, and I think we're seeing this with Jackie Bradley right now. It was Scope's first time leading the organization he came up with. And he struggled. But he's pretty darn good since. Yeah. So there's definitely some interesting options.
It's hard to get on, and I completely understand where people are coming from with Jackie Bradley Jr. I know he came into today's game batting 155. I get it, offensively, but I know that 95% of the balls that are hit out to center are getting caught. So I'm okay with that, and you just hope that number one, Christian Yelich gets back going into the way he's going, and Brewers fans and I myself have to take ownership of criticizing a guy like Avisail Garcia. I mean, he's your leader in batting average, home runs, RBIs. I mean, he's been phenomenal. Omar Narvaez has become what we thought he was going to be. I think so many people are just stuck on that bubble year, or not bubble year, excuse me. That's the NBA, about that 60 game season that, it just took guys. It was just so different and weird. And real quick, one question, and then we're going to wrap up the show. Keston Hiura, is this, and I know we talked about it in our show in April. Is it changing positions? Is it the off-field distractions and prayers up for his family? And that's what I was going to ask. Yeah. And do you think we see him back up in the major leagues this year?
Not anytime soon. I mean, I think he'll probably be a September call-up for sure. I mean, I think after All-Star break, maybe. Again, the coaching staff realizes what AAA pitching is as well. So he's putting up crazy numbers against really bad pitching. So it's kind of hard to take what he's doing in AAA seriously, and you don't want to rush him up. You rushed him up last time and didn't go didn't go better for him. He's making a switch. He never played infield in his life till he got the professional ball. He finally learned second base. We saw the struggles he had at second base. Now he's having to learn first base. His mother's obviously dealing with cancer. Mm-hmm. And this is the first time in his life he's ever struggled with baseball. So there are some issues that he's having mentally and physically. Look at him the way we looked at Corbin Burns in 2019.
That's a good point.
I mean, Corbin Burns was lights out in 18. I mean, no one could touch him. You look at Corbin Burns in 2019, you're like, holy crap, trade this dude right now while you have some value and try to get a haul from him if you can. Imagine if Stearns would have done that. No, he was so bad in 2019 that they took him out of baseball. They sent him to AA. He stunk. Like, you know what? You're shut down. We're going to send you to Arizona. We're going to teach you again how to throw a baseball, and we'll see what happens the following year. And he's been a Cy Young caliber pitcher last year and this year. So these things take time. Like, sometimes people need to realize when you're in professional sports, your entire life, you have been the best. Now you're at that level, and you might not be the best. You might struggle for the first time, and you don't know how to handle that. I think Keston's going to be fine. I hope he does. I like him as a person. He's going through a lot, obviously, with his mother, with the position changes, with struggling in a sport he has dominated his entire life. It's a mental thing, man. Baseball is all about failure. I mean, think about this. You get in the Hall of Fame if you fail 7 out of 10 times. Like, that's crazy, right? That's crazy. Yeah. If you fail 7 out of 10 times, that's like considered awesome. And that's, I mean, Keston here, I mean, it's a weird sport. It's a weird sport when it comes to that. I think he'll be fine. I think we'll see him at some point, but right now it's definitely a struggle for him.
And I know Brewers fans, and sometimes myself included, we get so worked up in the moment, and watching the game today, I was a little frustrating, but give credit where credit is absolutely due, and tip my cap. I think he's the best executive, or one of the best in baseball, in David Stearns. Obviously, Matt Arnold right there next to him, and Craig Counsell. If you were to tell me, Dario, that Christian Yelich, Colton Wong, Lorenzo Cain, Keston Hiura wouldn't be in the major leagues. If you were to tell me that these got Travis Shaw's out, you would have told me that this is what the team was going to go through in the first 3 months of the season, and then you were still going to tell me, oh, they'll still be in first. I would have thought you were the biggest liar. So again, credit where credit is due. This franchise, this ownership, obviously, and the management, I think they know what they're doing. I trust them going forward. I think that they're going to be there in September, going into October. And look, what better time to get your offense going than a 4-game set in Colorado? So that should be fun for the most part. You have the Bucks winning tomorrow. Do you want to throw out a final score before we cut it loose? I kind of like this. I like to stay away from the scores because my heart, I don't see, and that's what I tell people. I said I would not make a good gambler. I'm not a gambler. Obviously, it's illegal in Wisconsin. But if it was, or if it weren't legal, I still wouldn't do it because I bet with my heart. Not my head at all. It's always my heart. The Bucks are going to win. The Bucks are going to go 82-0. The Brewers should go 162-0, and the Packers should never lose. But that's just my thoughts on it. You got the Bucks winning tomorrow. I got them winning as well. We'll get to one prediction here. Your buddy Rhino drops in 106-97 Bucks. Let's hope that they do win. I'm with you, Dario. I do believe if they win tomorrow, which I do believe they will, I do think they go on and win the series. Thank you, man. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're constantly working between two professional teams and eating hot dogs and leading the charge over at American Family Field.
Still mad.
That's all right. But that'll do it, ladies and gentlemen, for tonight's episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you were on the live feed, thank you so much for understanding the schedule conflict that happens. It's going to happen probably 100 more times, and that is perfectly fine. Again, follow me on Twitter at Wisco_Brandon. Don't forget to follow the shows on Facebook, on Twitter. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube at Brew City Pod, and also follow my good friend Dario at Dario_Melendez. Milwaukee, let's hope for better days. Yesterday was a rough one. Go Bucks, go Brewers, and you guys have a great evening. See you later.